Chapter 7, Reflections of the Past. Henrik, sensing that Karas had something to share, remained quiet. He had learned quickly that Karas only spoke when the weight of his words was necessary. They reached a flat stone that jutted from the edge of the path, and Karas gestured for Henrik to sit. "There's something you need to know," Karas began, his voice low, "before we go any further." Henrik sat, his attention fully on the wizard. "I'm listening." Karas didn't look at him, but instead gazed out over the horizon. "You've seen Tantua, seen the heart of the Dwarven kingdom. You've stood before Deganger and the Ten, but there are things you haven't been told yet, things about the unkind, about the past." Henrik felt a knot tighten in his stomach. He'd heard whispers of a betrayal, something that had broken the alliance between humans, elves, and dwarves, but no one had spoken of it directly. "What happened, Karas?" Henrik asked, his voice quieter than he intended. Karas's shoulders sagged slightly, and when he spoke, his words carried the weight of centuries. "It was during the first invasion of the unkind. Back then, the world was different. The dwarves of the Placid Mountains, the humans of Kipt, and the elves of Heliopolis. Our three peoples were bound by alliances forged in blood and honor. We fought together for years, fending off the unkind's encroachments." Karas paused, and Henrik could see the pain of old memories flicker in the wizard's fiery eyes. "But then came that fateful night," Karas continued, his voice dropping. "The night that shattered everything." Henrik leaned forward slightly, the gravity of Karas's words pulling him deeper into the story. "We were holding the line at the Placid Mountains," Karas said. "The unkind had been relentless, but we were confident in our defense. Huaton, the Dwarven king at the time, commanded his forces with precision. The mountains were their home, and they knew every tunnel, every crevice. The dwarves fought with the strength of giants, and Hutin was their greatest warrior. His axe, forged from the bones of a long-dead giant, was said to cleave stone as easily as flesh." Henrik imagined the scene, the dwarves standing on the mountainside, their axes gleaming in the firelight, ready to defend their home against the monstrous horde. But there was something dark in Karas's tone, something that made Henrik's skin crawl. "Hueton had sent word to the elves and humans of the approaching threat," Karas continued. "He trusted his allies, believed that together we could hold the mountain. But the unkind, they were more cunning than we realized. They knew our strategies, our weaknesses. They attacked from all sides, wave after wave of them. Their numbers were endless, and they fought without fear, without hesitation." Karas's voice grew hoarse as he recounted the battle. "I was there, Henrik. I saw the devastation with my own eyes. I was stationed on the western ridge with Huton and his warriors. We fought as one, our axes and swords cutting down the unkind as they climbed the mountainside. But it wasn't enough. We held them off for hours, but still they came, stronger, fiercer with every wave." Henrik could almost hear the clashing of steel, the shouts of battle, and the guttural growls of the unkind as Karas spoke. He had heard stories of the unkind before, stories of creatures with matted hair, twisted limbs, and glowing white eyes. But to hear Karas describe them was different. It made the threat real. "And where were the others?" Henrik asked, already fearing the answer. Karas's expression darkened. "We waited for reinforcements. We waited for the armies of Kipt, for the elves to join us. But they never came." Henrik's heart sank. "What do you mean?" "The messengers sent from the Placid Mountains never made it to Kipt or Heliopolis," Karas explained. "The unkind had blocked their paths, cutting them down before they could deliver their pleas for aid. Huton didn't know. He believed help was on the way. He fought with the belief that his allies were coming to save his people." Henrik felt a surge of guilt. "And when they didn't, Chorus's voice was thick with sorrow. Huiton made the hardest decision a king could make. When it became clear that the unkind would breach the mountain, he ordered his engineers to collapse it. The tunnels, the stronghold, everything. He sacrificed his people's home, their legacy, to stop the unkind. Thousands of dwarves died that night, buried beneath the stone, along with countless unkind. But it wasn't enough. The unkind survived, and Huton and his remaining warriors were forced to retreat. Henrik stared at Koros in disbelief. He destroyed the Placid Mountains. Koros nodded. To save what was left of his people, but the cost was unimaginable. When the elves and humans finally arrived, they found nothing but rubble. The dwarves had already fled to Tantua, and the alliances between our peoples were shattered. Henrik sat in stunned silence. The weight of what had happened all those centuries ago settled on his shoulders like a boulder. Huton believed he had been abandoned, Kara said quietly. He never forgave the humans or the elves for not coming in time, and in truth, neither did the dwarves who followed him. That's why Tantua is sealed off from the world, why Deganger is so reluctant to trust anyone. Henrik felt his throat tighten. But it wasn't their fault. They didn't know. I know, Kara said, but grief and betrayal can twist the truth. The dwarves believe they were left to die, and that belief has been passed down through the generations. It's a wound that has never healed. Henrik clenched his fists. So this is what I'm up against. Not just the unkind, but centuries of distrust and resentment. Koros placed a hand on Henrik's shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. Yes, but you have a chance to change that. By completing the tasks set before you, you can prove to Deganger and the dwarves that the bond between our peoples is not broken beyond repair. Henrik met Koros's gaze, the fire in the wizard's eyes mirrored in his own. I will. I'll complete the tasks and I'll show them that Kipt hasn't forgotten its promises. Koros smiled faintly. I believe you will. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting the jungle in shadows, Henrik stood and looked out over the vast expanse of land that lay before them. The journey ahead was daunting, but he was ready. He had to be. We should return to the others, Koros said after a moment. There's much to prepare. Henrik nodded, but before they left he glanced back at the distant silhouette of the mountains. The memory of Huiton's sacrifice weighed heavily on his mind. The unkind were coming again, and this time there could be no hesitation. Together he and Koros descended the mountain, their footsteps echoing through the silence. The fight ahead would be long and perilous, but Henrik had no doubt in his heart. He would see this through, for Kipt, for the dwarves, and for the memory of those who had fallen at the Placid Mountains. And maybe, just maybe, the alliances that had once been broken could be mended once more.